Greetings. You know, sometimes you find a game just randomly. I don't even know how I found this game. You don't think much of it, but the longer you play, the more you get the feeling, this is kind of good and unique. Yeah, it's kind of cool. This game is kind of neat, actually. Well, Doll's Nest is that game. And there's something very special about it that you might not immediately expect when you are looking at it. Now, I want to be very frank with you as to not mislead you or give you any wrong impressions. This game is what you see and is what you will get. It's a competent third-person mech game set within a dystopian megastructure. There's some light Metroidvania aspects, Souls-like exploration, and a Demon Souls-esque level system, waifus, and some pretty good mechanics, and a serviceable art style. And in my eyes, the absolute highlight of the game, a very impressive level design and scale. It also helps that the game is fairly cheap. Now, performance-wise, this game has some issues, so let's get the negatives done first. It does run on Unreal Engine, yes. I feel so bad having to say that about the game. And at the same time, this game doesn't really look like it would need Unreal Engine. And sadly, yes, this does lead to certain areas running fairly worse performance-wise, and other areas are running fine for really no discernible reason. It also seems to load the levels in its entirety every time you teleport through the checkpoint system, which does make sense in a way, but it also means that when you're next to a checkpoint, the frames can sometimes be really bad. Like, we're talking about 60, 50 FPS for at least a few seconds. However, besides the Unreal Engine stutters and the general performance issues every now and then, I had no crashes at least. But yeah, the performance is one thing that maybe should or could still get looked at with a patch or some sort of performance pass. I'm not getting my hopes up that that is going to happen though. For now, maybe lowering the shadows is a solution. That is what helped me with performance. Again, the game really doesn't feel like it should need the Unreal Engine and the performance issues, and it doesn't need to run on ultra settings. I guess at least some of the lighting in this game looks kind of nice due to it being Unreal Engine, but really did this game need to be coded in Unreal? Let's be honest here. But maybe the engine made certain things possible to the dev team that other engines could not do? I'm not a developer, so I don't know. In addition, one thing is of note about the audio in this game, and now we are transitioning into the positives, because performance is really the only big negative about the game. Audio. This game lets the atmosphere of the desolation and loneliness of this game settle in. You don't have like a constant background soundtrack going on in your ear as you are exploring. The game just literally has sounds of the environmental effects or the machines or the wind, the effects of the area that you are in. Then there are very few areas that have a soundtrack, or let's call it ambience music. Those are usually levels of significance. So once you hear an ambience track in the background, you know, what's this about? Weird, that's not happening in the other region. And the soundtrack itself is limited to the boss fights, the menus, and the hub, which I do very much like. I like it when games let their audioscape stand on their own, when you just get to hear the environmental effects and the environments of the game without a steady background soundtrack. Not every game needs that. And I think that is also one of the strong points of the old From Software games, that they got to get you silence. There's sometimes just silence in between the boss fights and other musical aspects of the game. You get to settle a little bit with the atmosphere and the immersion to an extent. But that's about all I wanted to say when it comes to the soundscape. Now let's get to the most important part about a video game. Shocker, I know, it's the gameplay. Doll's Nest is essentially an iteration on Armored Core, specifically Modern Armored Core or Armored Core 6. At least I feel that is the most apt description. Especially the movement feels very similar. Your basic HUD elements consist of a health bar, an ammunition resource bar, and finally the good old stamina meter, or I guess energy or fuel. The only special thing here is how ammunition is used. Every reload depletes the resource meter, and that depends on the weapon. Either you drain a little bit or a lot. It actually has less to do with how much magazine the weapon has. It's more to do with how the game has balanced the weapon. You could have a giant sniper that has a single shot in the magazine, and that is going to take a bunch of your resources away because the game has decided that's a high-powered, dangerous weapon. It's really, really good. That one shot is worth a lot of resources. And then you could have a 50 magazine size assault rifle, and the game just takes a little bit of resources away because that's a weapon that doesn't have a lot of damage. This is a basic balancing act between weapons. You know, some of the primaries have really big magazine, and reloading some of them costs a lot and some less resources. Some of the shoulder weapons might be balanced that way. Some energy weapons might drain more resources because they have specific effects. On the other hand, you kind of have certain guns that specifically balance ammo efficiency, and it's in the description. If the gun says something about really high efficiency in terms of ammo resources, that means as a trade-off they probably have less magazine size, less damage, or I don't know, some other balancing mechanic. But they also are really, really ammo efficient. Each weapon still though has a dedicated reload animation and reload time for each magazine or each shot, depending on the weapon. And in certain cases, and this is really important to remember, a weapon has a downtime in between shots. And since you have two primary weapons, the idea is you shoot that weapon and then you switch to the other primary while that weapon has a shot cooldown, and then you switch back. That's the basic idea, at least. You probably shouldn't run weapons that have a long downtime in between shots, because then you're basically permanently switching weapons around. I mean, that is a playstyle that you can do, so I mean, I'm not trying to get you off that path, but that might be a little bit annoying. Now, what this game does very well is actually make the ammo economy feel meaningful. In certain games, ammo is either ridiculously scarce and annoying to come by, or on the other hand, you have way too many methods to regain ammunition. This game, however, finds a good middle ground, and especially due to how the exploration is set up, you might find yourself in a situation where you are almost out of supply refills and out of ammo, so it's a decision to keep going or go back to the checkpoint. More on that specific aspect of the game later. All in all, it is a very good idea to regularly stock up on supply refills and health items, as the game does hand them out every now and then, but not indefinitely. And on your first playthrough, you will probably have to buy them. So stocking up in the shop is a very good idea as to not run out. And the game doesn't do a lot of hand-holding, so you better make sure to actually stock up on healing items and refill supplies. Yes, this game has healing items that do not regenerate. It doesn't have a Estus Flask equivalent. These are finite resources, similar to all of the resources in the game. They are all finite. Your basic movement is either normal walking speed or a sprint. In this game it is called boosting. And then there is a very, very short cooldown dodge that is described as an initial boost. It's a dodge move. Come on, it's a From Software-like game. It has a dodge. There is basically no cooldown on dodging though, basically until you run out of stamina, that is, or energy in this case. The real fun begins here though, at the actual build making process. Your player character is defined as a nymph, whatever that means in the lore of this game. I don't really know what the significance of that descriptor is, but you are basically a completely artificially grown human. Or you're not even a human, you're just a humanoid machine. You're not biological at all. It's a full-on machine creation. As everything is in this game, by the way. We are in a deep and dark dystopia in the very far future, or in an alternate reality. So there's basically no more carbon-based life forms. Or at least that's what the lore says. But we as a machine are still somehow grown in a womb or some sort of birthing sac, whatever that thing is. And the machines in general have some weird biological traits in this game. We're gonna see more of that later, but they're not truly bio-machines, at least not in a classical sense. I don't know how that works out, maybe shouldn't think about it too much. We will talk about the actual character build a bit later. For now, let's look at the mech and its parts, because that is obviously the most important thing in a mech game. So the mechs in this game are either really tiny, arguably kind of just exosuits, or the player characters are all ridiculously huge. I tend to lean towards the mechs just being very person-sized in this game, as this makes much more sense with some of the weapons that you can carry. And that also means that most of the robots are weirdly person-sized too. whatever, it's an indie fantasy mech game, I probably shouldn't think about it too much. Anyway, your mech consists of multiple parts or frames, as they are called in this game. Usually, if you find a new mech, it's a full set of 5 parts. In certain cases, you only get a single or a unique part, or only 3 parts, but that is fairly rare. So how is the mech built in this game? Starting from the top, we got the headset or the head module. This one governs your targeting area, your targeting range, and your lock-on speed. So as you can already see, this one is really important for the type of weapons you want to use and your playstyle. Do you want to go fast in CQC, or maybe slow and a long range, and so on and so forth. There is the hanger module, which kind of is sitting at your backside. This one is for one, a stylish attachment. You can gain a lot of style points with your mech with that, but it also governs the performance of all secondary weapons, all of the back weapons, your shoulder weapons, so to say, the really big guns. Important stats here are the rear weapons performance, boosting the accuracy and reload speed of the big guns. Then there is the most unique part of the build, the utility module. This one has a shit ton of possible effects depending on what module you put into your mech. You got all sorts of stuff from going invisible to getting drones and turrets you can summon or deploy. Then you have a smoke bomb. You can disable enemy targeting, or you can make decoy clones of yourself. There's some really interesting choices to be made here. Then we have the thrusters. These heavily affect your booster speed, your hover time, your dodge cost and your dodge range, the length of a boost, and partially your jump height. Choosing the right booster for your build is really fun and also really important, as going fast as a mech is always a cool thing to do. Or maybe you really want to have a safe long range dodge, or I don't know, you want to hover a bunch in the air. That depends all on your booster. Lastly, we have the mobility module, or the legs, and there we have a ton of choice. We got our normal bipedal legs. They have good carry capacity, okay mobility, as well as a good ground speed and a middling jump. They're kind of the midpoint. And then we have the reverse joint legs. These have really good mobility and walking speed, as well as being really good for like micro movements and turning speed. And also they have a fairly good jump. And then there are all sorts of quad legs. They are designed to carry more weight while still kind of keeping the mobile handling stat, but they will have slower ground speed and a shorter dodge. They're also way more tanky. And then we got the classic heavy tank threads, or the wheels, if you want to be really tanky. However, this is where the game has some quirky additions. We have wheel legs, or skaters? These have the absolute best ground speed, so if you want to go really fast, that's the legs you should choose. And then we have 2 flying type mobility modules. One of them always kind of look like they got small stubby feet. If you basically see really small stubby feet, those are the mobility modules for long hovering and flight. And finally we have the interesting legs, the ones that make you look like a plane. If you see these, that means those always have a really high rocket assisted jump. And this game has some very slight Metroidvania aspects. So having a high jump, similar to maybe a double jump, can get you into difficult places much easier and earlier. Or rather, sometimes it is required to get to certain hidden spots in the game. And you should explore in this game. You absolutely should explore. It's also cool if you want to reach like a flying boss or an enemy, for example. Each mech part has stats like resistance, armor, and weight, and this all has obviously an effect on your carry capacity. And obviously you can overburden yourself. Stronger legs are tankier and they carry more, but also if you have a heavy utility module, that also weighs a ton, similar to big shoulder weapons. The heavier the part is, usually, the more defenses it gives you. Build crafting in this game is really fun, and the good thing is, in the first third of the game, at least the first 3 levels, you don't really need to upgrade anything. So at this point in the game, you can just kind of mix, match and experiment with things you like. Also, yes, there are lots and lots of stats, as you might have seen. This might look a bit intimidating at first, as many of these build crafting games might be, but don't be discouraged. There is a handy help function that explains every single stat to you. It's really fun to figure out how to build the fastest ground speed mech or the longest dodge animation and so on and so forth. And if you are lost at any point in time, just consult the help option, and then hover over the thing that you don't understand and let the game explain it to you. Now let's get into the primary and secondary weapons. Firstly, chef's kiss on the design here. So many weapons in this game have that cool sci-fi aesthetics. Sometimes it's style over substance, yeah, but it's also supposed to be a cool sci-fi game, you know. We got everything from assault rifles to SMGs, precision DMRs, snipers, LMGs, then a bunch of energy-based weapons like compressed guns, laser snipers, shotguns, plasma shotguns, grenade launchers, plasma grenade launchers, everything is present. And the back weapons are there too. Giant lasers, huge sniper rifles, so big so that you need to actually deploy before you can shoot it, rocket launchers, missiles, a giant artillery cannon, and then a giant, audaciously sized Vulcan cannon. That thing looks so ridiculous on the... It's so stupid. Actually, some of these guns are comically large. Damage-wise, you got a few important stats. We got physical damage, duh, and thermal damage. Physical damage is being done by any conventional ballistic weapon, and all the laser guns do thermal damage, and so do all the plasma rifles. That is very important as certain enemies are resistant or weak to the different damage types. Then we got the third stat on every weapon, which is critical damage or damage plus. The basic rule here is if a gun has a visual silencer, it is doing extra critical damage to weak spots, but their main damage is usually lower. Now, any weapon does critical damage, but these silencer type weapons are specialized for critical damage. Critical weak spots are usually represented in the game as the energy core or an energy source, usually on the back of most of the machines. Basically, if it's some sort of canister or a glowing spot, it's a weak spot. And then we get a bunch of status effects, from electrical damage to fire to disintegration and bleeding. All of these just do a bunch of extra damage. There's nothing special about it. They have negative effects when they're triggered. And then there is parasitic infection, which is essentially just deathblight or curse. It instantly kills you when a machine is infected. Oh yeah, that also counts for the enemies. Lore-wise, this is actually quite interesting, since it at least appears that some of the machines are mutated or overgrown with something. So the game calls these variants, and these machines have gone on for so long that these are actually evolving or randomly mutating. And there's also the possibility that there is some sort of infection spreading around. Again, the lore in this game is very obtuse, so I don't really know what's going on there, but yeah. And if you pay close attention to the status items in this game, all of the consumables, even the ones that cure your status ailments, these all look like disgusting insect parasites, and they're all called pests. So yeah, and you actually consume them or you integrate them into your body, and then they cleanse you from the status effects like some sort of nanomachine. It's pretty fucking grungy and dark. You're actually like putting another parasite into your body to get rid of the primary parasite. Now, the effect of parasitic infection is also quite nicely explained in the lore. Your main systems are essentially taken over by the viral infection, a program that just wipes your entire personality and therefore kills you entirely, instantly. Some machines even carry these parasites and spread them through their attacks, but they are also vulnerable to them if they stay in the parasitic cloud for too long. It's all very interesting from a lore perspective. Back to the guns though. While there are many, and they are quite varied, and I pretty much had to try most of them out in my playthrough, they are very much not made equal. How so, you might ask? Well, let's look at the biggest, meanest sniper in the game. This thing basically looks like some sort of handheld artillery or a tank cannon. It only has 2 shots, a long reload time, and for being nerfed to such a degree, it does not do enough damage. A basic assault rifle likely kills any enemy faster than this gun ever will, and that is the main problem with some of the balancing of the weapons. Anything that has an okay rate of fire, okay range, and good ammo efficiency is going to dumpster all over most of the other specialized weapons. Oh, by the way, if you read standard on something, don't be fooled. The standard types of weapons are really good. The standard assault rifle is legitimately one of the most overall usable weapons in the game. The issue is that big damage and slow firing weapons are double cucked by long reload times and slow fire rates and small magazines and a high resource cost. Yeah, it's cool to use like a long barrel DMR that even ignores the little regenerating shield that some of the enemies have. Oh, and you, by the way, too. You too have a little extra regenerating shield. That gun ignores the shield, so it goes straight through to health damage. That is cool, but it only has 6 shots in the mag. the reload is a bit too long and the damage is not enough in relation to it. On the other hand, you have a DMR that not only does fire damage, but it also has more shots in the magazine and fires faster. Sure, it has less range, but it can proc fire damage on enemies, which does a shit ton of damage. So it's just better. And this is a tiny bit unfortunate that some of the back weapons as well are even put to shame by some generic plasma rifle, like an automatic plasma rifle. However, the game is not too difficult, so style over substance is absolutely something you can do. If you want to use the cool guns because they look cool, you can absolutely do that. It's sometimes just going to be less effective. In addition, if you want really high skill expression, use one of the melee weapons in the game. These are all about correct positioning and reward you with a shit ton of damage. And of course, there's a pile bunker in this game. I mean, why wouldn't there be a pile bunker in the game? Of course there's a pile bunker in this game. Just make sure though to use guns that can hang within their correct damage range. Each gun has a fall off range, so firing an SMG at a target that is like 100 meters away won't do any damage. In that case, for exploration I would actually advise you to use at least one of the DMRs, because they are generally useful for enemies that stay at range. In essence, fire rate needs to be at least okay, the range stat needs to be good, and you don't really want to have two guns at the same time that have like a lot of downtime in between shots, either for reloading or for just shooting. One cool aspect is though that a one-handed weapon can be dual wielded. You just put the one-handed weapon in slot 1 and the other one-handed weapon in slot 2, and then they will be dual wielded together. Usually you also will get two copies of the same gun, if it's a one-handed gun. And the one-handed fire SMGs, for example, can absolutely shred at close range, of course. Now, on the other hand, the two revolvers, which are really cool conceptually, they're sadly a bit shit. They have a long reload time, a long downtime in between shots, and since you dual wield them, you can't switch to any other weapon. So I don't know why the revolvers had to be neutered like this. Once again, low fire rate guns being kind of too balanced, making them a bit weak. I wish there was a patch or a balance pass, but the studio is pretty small and there's a lot of guns and gear in the game, so I don't think anything significant is going to change. The community would really like to see updates. Hell, I would love a DLC for this game, but who knows? Maybe we get lucky? I don't expect anything though. Anyway, just pick the guns you like the most. And don't forget, in the beginning of the game, you have no need to upgrade anything. Just mix and match and do what you like. Oh, and yes, upgrading weapons in this game can be done indefinitely. You're not limited on upgrade materials. You don't have immediate access to all crafting materials at the start from the shop, but as you keep killing bosses, the shop will expand and eventually you can buy all upgrade materials. Yes, even the max level upgrade ones. Take note from that from Software, this game has infinite respec and infinite upgrades from the get-go without requiring me to install a mod. Wow! Now let's talk about the last aspect of build crafting, your character. That requires a slight bit of a spoiler explanation, but this video is going to be filled with spoilers and I had a warning at the beginning, so you have been warned. Once you defeat a boss in a section of a level, every time, it's backtrack time, baby. Since somewhere there's now an enemy mech that spawns. It's like a PvE invasion in Dark Souls. Once you put that mech down, you get an upgrade material, yet you should not sell. Do not sell that. In general, by the way, don't sell any items in this game. If you pick up the little glowing stones, for example, do not sell them. They will actually be useful later. If you find bionic parts, which are the soul items, do not immediately sell them. Thank me later. And God forbid, do not sell the pearls. If you find pearls in this game, hoard them. Keep them. Also, thank me later. The nerf sample that you get from the mechs when you defeat them, basically the spinal cords, can be used to upgrade your passive character stats. For example, more barrier, that is the little regenerating shield. You can have more stamina, better weapon performance, better ammo economy, more loot from enemies, including ammo drops, or more melee damage, or more mobility for your mech. Yeah, by the way, you read that correct. You can tune your character on the fly, and you can always respec your points as much as you want. And in addition, looking at the melee stat, do you remember the headset? Yeah, the one that is required for targeting. That also actually has a melee boosting stat. So for a melee build, you want your character as well as your mech build around melee damage. Or you can just be a speedy assassin that goes invisible and destroys the enemy through the weak spot damage with a silent shotgun. It's your choice. The enemies you fight are all robots. The enemy variety is okay, but not the strongest point of the game. In addition, there are bosses in each section of the levels. The bosses are serviceable with a few exceptions, but they're not very difficult to defeat, again with a few exceptions. And there is going to be one exception that we need to talk about right now. And I do feel compelled to talk about this. Please, if you play this game, don't be discouraged if you meet the Great Filter. Yes, there is a Balteus in this game, and it's the flying helicopter. I guess I can say it here. The game is kind of set up like Demon's Souls, with a central hub from which you can visit levels free of your choosing. These levels then expand as you explore and defeat bosses. That means, in theory, the helicopter boss could be the very first boss you face. And he might be extremely difficult if you don't have the right gear yet. The boss is actually a very good skill check that teaches you about thermal versus physical damage, weapon range and lock-on range. In short though, if you struggle, don't let yourself get filtered by this guy, okay? Just go somewhere else, find another mech part or a gun, and then maybe come back and hit him with a big stick or something. Also, you can defeat him with a totally unoptimized build. It's just going to be a bit of a war of attrition, let's put it that way. The rest of the bosses are not as much of a progression stopper. Now that is most of the gameplay aspects explained. Now let's move on to the really cool stuff, the level and the visual design of this game. So I don't even really know how to put this into words, to be honest. The visual style and the level design is insane. Like, it's insanely good, but it's also surreal, especially in terms of exploration and the vistas that you can see. I will talk about at least every level a little bit and then put a specific spotlight on my favorite ones. First off, this game has Dark Souls 1 level exploration. Yes, Dark Souls 1. And the progression built through the level exploration is absolute fucking peak. It is without a doubt the best aspect of this game. I'm not shitting you. There is only one checkpoint in each level. Yes, only one. And the levels are built so well that you always end up exploring yourself back through a shortcut to that one singular checkpoint. This game has the same moments like the elevator down from the Undead Burg. Not shitting you. And it also has some of the same kind of exploration moments where you're not sure if you should go through the next door to the room since your supplies are really low, but there might just be the chance that the next room has like a teleporter or a door or an elevator that leads back to the bonfire, so to say. The game also functions as a little Demon's Souls clone. You begin in a starting area similar to the tutorial zone, I guess. This area is already pretty big, and in addition it has one of the coolest aspects of this game, right in front of your nose as you come out of the first tunnel. It looks like some sort of maintenance area. In my headcanon, this is like a side area or like the insides of the megastructure that this game takes place in. It's some part that's really deep underground. And right at the beginning, there's an elevator that you cannot use yet. And you already probably have expected what this is. Yep, this is the elevator. That is literally the way to the end game area. Literally the elevator down to the final boss. And it's right here in the very beginning of the game. I just love additions like that in a game. And man, the area down there is cool as hell, but not yet. Not yet. I'm gonna save that for later. Now, after your first boss kill, you teleport to the hub or the nest, the decayed brood chamber. That's what it's called in the game. I didn't make up that name. And there you talk to your master, who wants you to find all their body parts. And that is basically the main quest. Gather some robot parts. And in that hub there are 3 teleporters or archstones, and these lead you to 3 distinct areas of the megastructure: top, middle and lower level. Sadly, these levels are not entirely accurately placed in the teleporter menu. Basically, the first level of the top one is the first one, and then the lowest level of the last area is at the bottom. But then they kind of split in more levels, so it's not correctly represented that these, when you're going through the teleporter menu, it's not actually going from the top to the bottom. That's not how it is. Now, in my personal opinion, the water treatment facility, which is the last level in the top area, that is actually, like, location wise, the tippy top of the megastructure. Perhaps it's even on the surface, while the Tomb of Divine Wisdom, which is the lowest level, like the last one, that is at the very bottom of the superstructure, with a few exceptions. It's not entirely clear where you are, and if there is a sky present in the levels, there's something that could be seen as clouds, but I think it's all inside a giant megastructure. That's my personal headcanon. One hint to me personally is the repeating spiral. There's like a giant spire in the middle of the map that kind of rises up, and this spire motif is almost present in every map. So my theory is that this spire goes like all the way through the levels from top to bottom. You know, that's at least that's the idea. Now the only exception is the starting and the end game area, which are probably even further down in the underground somewhere. One thing that is really cool about this game is that exploration is always rewarded with actual loot. I mean weapons and mech parts, and these are hidden everywhere. If there's a roof, you better get on that roof. If there's some nook or hidden crevice that you can see, you better check it out. There's some scaffolding off to the side, better get to it and take a look. And since you always get a gun or a part, it's usually always worth to explore. It's really nice how they managed to do this. It's also the reason why there's so many gear pieces in this game. One thing that's really important as a tip for you, actually 2 tips: find an NPC called Yo-Yo in the starting area and get her shop opened up. That's really important. And if you find an area blocked by a pulsating, mysterious red barrier, take a note of that. Take a note of where you found that red barrier, because these are really important. The prevailing theme in this game is post-human structures. They look like maybe one day humans might have built them, but through thousands, maybe millions of years, the machines built onto it and made the entire thing into like a surreal, mechanical, dystopian nightmare. The levels are all a wild mix of structures and shapes that mildly make sense, and sometimes are just insane and nonsensically positioned. It gives the game a really dreamy and nightmarish vibe. I can't really put my finger on it. So let's go through these layers of HOD. That's the name of the world, or I guess the superstructure. It's called HOD. One thing to keep in mind, you cannot complete all level stages in one go. There will be a red barrier blocking your progress, akin to the gold barriers in Dark Souls 1. Each boss before the final red barrier will, however, drop an item for you that you will need to progress. If you have all 3 of these code fragments, at that point you will be able to continue on to the end game, let's call it that. So let's start with the middle level of the megastructure, with the Great Forest. No idea why it's called that. I guess there's trees around. Those can't be biological trees, but there's trees around. This looks a little bit more like something humans might have lived in, besides the giant trees and some of the structures in the distance. Everything in this game is gigantic and huge. The corridors, the roads, the buildings, just everything. This is just an old decrepit mega city of some sort. Lots of bent skyscrapers and highways. Enemies here are snipers, normal robots, big turret guy and flamethrowers, and a big spider robots. Yeah. Beating the boss of this area unlocks the Arboreal Nest, which is the following area here. This invokes the idea of it being another hub, possibly, maybe for other nymphs like you, but also the tree is missing that's in your hub area, so I don't know. There's also no queen present. There's like a lore reason why these nests usually have a queen and those are not there, but the area is controlled by other nymph types, so to say, so I don't really know how the lore works out here. However, the spire structure here is very present in this level. Everything basically revolves around this giant central room. The level progression here is probably at its best. You will always loop back into this main room, and then you get a shortcut and another shortcut and another shortcut. You basically unlock this entire area. This entire thing is going to be completely open by the end when you've explored it from top to bottom. Beating the boss in this area will give you your first code fragment. Now let's move on to the upper level. The theme here is blue somehow. I don't know how they pulled it off, but yeah, it feels really blue for some reason. The first zone here is the upturned forest. Also no clue why it's called that. Maybe because it's a bunch of structures hanging from a ceiling. I see no trees here, but it looks like we're at least close to the surface. I don't really know how to describe this first zone. Lots of platforms, hanging buildings. Doesn't really look like it's made for humans or by humans. It's maybe some sort of maintenance area. Defeating the boss here, which is the helicopter guy, gives you access to the vault. I don't know whose fault it is, but it's just called that way. Now this one is actually labeled as a transitionary area between the surface and the underground. So pipes. Lots of big pipes many pipes, and a very clear progression upwards, which I really do like. We are actually decisively going up to the surface. It partially feels like we are inside a dam or something water related maybe. That assumption will be quite correct in the next level. Now beating the boss of this area gives you your second code fragment. And now we have to go to one of my favorite zones, and you might already know why. This is the accumulation zone. It's a pretty abysmal place, constant acid rain, at least that's what the lore says. I don't actually see any rain in the game. It's a cast over sky, sand everywhere. It's a really rundown place, rusted, abandoned, and all of the robots here seem to be inflicted or infected by something or mutated. This is the lower level of the megastructure, and we are very much descending this time around. Ring a bell? Yes, this is Blighttown. This is the Blighttown of the game, and we are currently just at the start. Also, here are some of the cooler vistas in the game. A big look at the spire of the megastructure, and this level is also built around visual progression, kind of like Dark Souls. You can actually go to this cliff and then just look down into the next two levels. So when you're looking down there, this is where you will be going. That's kind of cool. It only really happens here since you're actually going down all the time. Beating the boss here unlocks the Forbidden Domain. Oh yeah, ominous sounding name. It's a poisonous swamp. It's a poisonous swamp. And in the middle, on the other side of a crater, sits a giant ballista that shoots at you. And there is a specific secret. If you have that ballista, shoot a wall. That's all I'm saying. Have I already said that this is Blighttown? Yeah. Only the swamp is actually a field of some sort of mechanical flowers that excrete corrosive mist or something like that. It's essentially just poison. You know, the entire area looks very corroded and rusted, weird looking exteriors all around, and you are basically at the side, at the base of the spire. Very, very close to the lowest part of the entire world. And beating the final boss here gives you the last fragment. And now comes a maybe controversial part. It's now time for my absolute favorite level, which is more of an intermission or a very short midi game, you could say. You will now go back to the beginning of the game, the very first level, and you will take that elevator that I talked about very, very far down. Remember how you might need some light? Yep, you better buy these glowstone, you better have those prepared. I told you you shouldn't sell them. This area has two gimmicks: absolute darkness and a very wrong feeling progression. The entire area is actually just a giant lockdown zone, a big ass pit that is locked down by multiple partition walls. And you slowly progress through each sector, opening up those giant bulkheads. It definitely feels like you are unearthing something that was locked down there for a reason. Finally, you get the last bulkhead open and you can take a large plunge further down. And beating this boss gives you your first body part, or I guess it's the second body part, her right eye. At the very beginning of the game you got her left eye. Now you get two eyes. That item can now be used to open all the red barriers in the game. Yup, now you can go back into each level and unlock those extra secret areas. It's backtracking time, baby, and I hope you wrote down all of those red barrier locations like I told you. And also these same red barriers open up the last 3 levels. The end game. In the middle level, the last zone is called The Bridge. Another really cool progression level. It's just literally a large bridge. It's one long ass corridor, but the entire corridor is locked down again. So you kind of weasel your way around through like very overgrown and decrepit halls. I'm actually curious what kind of plants these are supposed to be. They are only really visible in this zone and they grow pretty fucking large. They're bigger than some of the buildings down there. Once you unlocked all of the partitions, you can just literally start from the beginning checkpoint and just go straight through the entire bridge to the boss. But there's a way cooler shortcut here. Right next to the boss, there's an elevator that takes you all the way down back to the first checkpoint of the first level, the Great Forest. Yeah, so if you wondered why the elevator down there didn't open, or you didn't find a way to open this one, it's because it's actually a shortcut from the final boss to the first area. It's just a really cool detail. Now, beating the last boss in the middle level gives you guessed it, your first body part. And then all the way to the surface. There is probably the most surreal level out of all of them, the water treatment level. This one, man, this one is so fucking cool and weird. It's, again, really blue. I don't know what else I could use to describe it. It just feels weird being here. There's a giant artificial sun in the background. I don't know, the devs just put that there, and yeah, the devs were right. It looks really fucking cool. It's a really cool vista in the game. It also gives the entire place a strange feeling of this giant... Obviously, it's supposed to be a giant reactor core, right? Or something, but it gives the entire level this alien, otherworldly look because it's like shining across the water surface. The entire zone, almost everything, is underwater, and you basically just navigate on floating platforms. So much of the zone is just purely built around the idea of gameplay. There's like random blocks and grates in the water. It kind of feels like a child just put it there, you know, just building blocks. Or rather, it feels like a modded level where some of the original normal set pieces were kind of resized and used as random platforms, like resized objects just randomly arranged in the water. It all feels surreal and weird. It's like a very video game feeling level. And again, I think it's supposed to be on the surface, maybe. Yeah, this is for sure one of the best feeling levels. And again, the reactor core in the distance, whoever had the idea to put that there, yeah man, I get it. It looks fucking cool. If you beat the boss in this area, shocker, you get another body part. And now onto one of the most mysterious and creepy, fucked up areas in the game. All the way down, at the very bottom of the megastructure, is the Tomb of Divine Wisdom. What happened here? No clue. What wisdom was buried here? No idea. But there's one thing that is clear. This once was another nest or something akin to your hub area. And something has taken the entire area over. There's like a thick haze over the entire zone. You can barely see through it. There are these giant tick-like robots on the wall that breathe. They breathe something in and out. And then there are infested robots that spread the parasitic infection. And finally, you see a bunch of shambling corpses of nymphs, like your own kind, with some sort of tumorous parasites on their head. They all kind of walk towards you and throw themselves at you while exploding in a cloud of parasites. There is no real explanation for what happened here, but it's really fucking creepy. The entire area has its own soundtrack even, which kind of consists of a demented ambient noise track and occasionally breathing and distant screaming in your ear. It's very, very uncomfortable to be there. You can even find the remnants of a big tree, kind of like the one that is in your hub area, so it definitely was a place akin to your nest at some point. So something infected this area. Clearly it's also the origin point of the infection that spread to the machines in the upper zones, and the only bit of world building is a corpse that you can find in the water. The item lore from that corpse kind of just speaks about something being present in this area, something that it is listening. What that is, no clue. We never see anything besides the robots, the nymph, and the final boss in the area. Eventually you beat that guy and get your final body part here. And now you can go back to your master, and she basically tells you to go below and face her. No idea why we have to fight her, but oh well, there had to be a final boss. Now from the depths, you can go even further, down to the Ark. That's the place your master originates from. She is likely the progenitor to all nymphs and all the nests that are out there. And now you can finally go through that last barrier down there and go even further down. And that is also why I would argue that this is probably the deepest point in the game. And that would be the area of your final boss fight. And then lastly, you get to decide one of two endings. You can embrace your master or end her. No idea what any of these endings mean. In one of them you turn into a tree. I guess since I'm already yapping about it, let's then quickly talk about the story. Yeah man, I have no clue about the story. I mean the basic story, but the lore? No idea. It's on the one hand convoluted, like a FromSoft game, but it's also entirely in Japanese. So subtitle reading is necessary and you never really know if something was lost in translation. I kind of get the gist of it. I mean, the main story is clear, but how the different factions align or oppose each other? No idea. Who are some of these enigmatic NPCs you meet? No clue. Why is there a divine child? I don't know. Why did one nest kill their queen, and why do they now worship a god, and who is that god? I don't know. What happened in the accumulation zone? Why is there one giant NPC in the hub area? I have no clue. Why are there twins with 4 arms? Your master in the hub is in exposition dump, so you can ask her pretty much about anything, but she only kind of gives you snippets of information, so understanding the lore is pretty difficult. But then again, the gameplay and map design is what carries this game, and it carries the game hard. So the story being very vague and mysterious isn't really a big turnoff for me. I do still like my headcanon though of the entire game being inside a megastructure. There's really nothing that confirms or denies this theory though, so I'm gonna stick with it. Anyway, it's cool world building that they have here. It's very grimdark, it's very dystopian, very surreal, and yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to show. I really like this game and it's very, very underrated. Some of the ideas here are really good concepts, could probably be done in other games. Again, map and level design, top notch. Top notch. It's so cool what you can do with like relatively simple assets and graphics. I really hope we get a sequel or a DLC at some point. For now, maybe try it out. There's New Game Plus and a hard mode if you're interested in multiple playthroughs. And there are different NPC quests. Those are all pretty long and they have different endings. So to get all of the items, multiple playthroughs are actually needed. So if you're interested, I hope this was informative. And with that being said, I will see you next time.